Thank you so much for joining us today. We want to welcome you to the virtual event about the Panama Canal. We're just so grateful that you could join us. Lots to talk about today. So just want to get started by making sure that you know who we are. We are Expedia Cruises here in Petaluma, California. And we've been very fortunate over the years to not only have many guests that travel with us, but we have those guests returning to us again and again. So we want to make sure you understand we are not a call center. We've got live agents who are experienced travel professionals ready to assist you and answer any questions. So if there's anything that we don't cover tonight, we are all here to help you. And as we launch into this great destination, please let me request that you mute your microphones if you haven't already, and be sure to open up again at the end of the presentation, because we'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. You're also welcome to jot down anything in the chat box if you have any questions, and that way we can review them. So hopefully all know where the mute button is, as well as the chat box. Yep, it looks like everyone is muted, so we will go ahead and go on. I don't know about you, but I look at that picture and of course right away I get excited about talking about the Panama Canal. Just to quickly introduce us, those who are presenting for you today, my name is KK Akbray. I'm the Vice President of Sales for Expedia Cruises, and with us today is Brian Murphy. He's the president and co-owner of Expedia Cruises here in Petaluma. Brian, I believe you're on screen, so you can wave and say hello.
I am. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. This is the beginning of a series of a lot of destination type webinars, seminars, whatever we want to call them, virtual events, where we'll be talking about different destinations that are really iconic. And I'm not going to try to steal KK's thunder, but because she's going to lead us through most of this presentation. But, Condé Nast magazine listed the 7 iconic cruise destinations to do in the world, and the Panama Canal is one of them. So we thought this was a great way to jump off with this type of a presentation. So I'll let you take it away, KK.
Oh, thanks. Well, I love to talk about the Panama Canal. It is one of the iconic destinations in the world. And if you haven't experienced it, it is commonly known as the path between the seas, of course, because it's an engineering marvel with a history that spans nations and wars and strife and wonder. And really what we're talking about is connecting the Pacific and the Atlantic Ocean. Many of you know some of the details, but really when I think of this, and when you look at this image, you think about the fact that the Panama Canal was built to save ships almost 8,000 miles as they used to go around the tip of South America from New York to San Francisco and beyond. And the complexity of creating a waterway to a man-made lake 85 feet above sea level with a series of locks was originally imagined by the French, of course, who embarked on the project in 1881, only to bail when the engineering problems and the high worker mortality rate just proved too costly. So in 1901 is when, that's when Teddy Roosevelt, was president. The United States really picked things back up again and completed the canal in 1914. And of course, there are 3 sets of locks. We have the Miraflores locks, which are closest to Panama City and the Pacific Ocean. And those locks have 2 chambers and raise the ship 54 feet up to Lake Miraflores. The Pedro Miguel locks, they're not far from Miraflores, but they have single chamber, and that raises the ships up 31 feet to Lake Gatun. And then the Gatun locks, of course, are the closest locks to the Atlantic Ocean, and they have 3 chambers that lower the ships a total of 85 feet back to sea level. It's just, the whole thing is a marvel. And of course, then we have the new locks, right? So those were the traditional locks, and then the new locks, they're created for the opportunity for what they call the post-Panamax vessels to transit, introducing the newer, larger ships to the West Coast. Of course, it also made a huge difference for all the container and cargo vessels that were transporting goods through the canal, which is, of course, one of the main functions, right? We tend to think of it from a passenger perspective, but of course, the goods and services that are that transit through there are super important. What's interesting about the new locks is that you're going to notice in this image that they have the new, it's called the basin system. This really allows 60% of the water that's required to lift and lower the ships to be reused. And it really, the design is supposed to reduce the stress on the waterways surrounding the locks. So you'll see there the imagery of how it works, and then what it looks like today with those 3 basins next to each set of locks. And of course, I have so many personal favorite reasons for transiting the canal. I love hearing the macaws in the trees, and the toucans, you can see them perching, showing off their beautiful colors. You're going to see sloths hanging around, monkeys frolicking on the trees. Some of them are on the side. You'll even see some gators. I saw some of these gators that were the size of a vehicle. And of course, they're just dreaming of their next meal, and I'm hoping that it's not me. But you'll hear some of the chatter from the monkeys. And all of this is while you're drifting through the lily pads that sometimes can cover the Panama Canal, the waterway itself, literally from side to side. It's quite fascinating. Some of the ports of call along the way that you're going to experience when you go to, for example, Costa Rica. In Costa Rica, this is a picture of the coffee plantations that you can often see them out in the plantations. You'll notice them on the steep hillsides. And as they pick the coffee, you'll get a chance to see where they roast it, how they produce it. And of course, the best part is tasting the coffee. One of my favorite places to go is the ox cart factory. These colorful carts are very well known. And of course, if you're daring, you can even take a ride. Some of the other places that you might visit would be Cartagena. You can go and see the St. Pedro Church, the Inquisition Palace, beautiful walled city that you get a chance to go in and around. And of course, you could even do an emerald tour. I don't know about you, but I was fascinated when I learned about how Colombia is the largest producers of emeralds worldwide. And it was really fun to learn about the quality and how to spot the fakes from the real thing. So lots of great destinations along the way. But there's nothing more exciting than when those massive doors open and your giant cruise ship enters the locks and you can see the ship either rising or lowering before exiting on the other side. It's simply amazing. So we're going to take you on a quick 30-second Panama Canal tour through the locks. And so for a quick second, you're going to find us. So we're going to exit and come back again. So bear with us as we transition here quickly. It's so exciting when we do these transits and you can have all of those experiences. We are excited to announce that Brian is actually going to be hosting a sailing through the Panama Canal. And this particular full transit, because of course there's many ways to see the canal, but this one is a full transit and happens to be during the holidays. So we thought we'd share a little bit about this particular cruise. Brian, would you like to talk about the sailing that you're going to be hosting with us?
Sure. You know, one of the traditions that we've done in my family is that during the holidays, we go on a cruise. Hard to believe. I'm on enough cruises all the time, between wine cruises and company cruises and everything else we do. But when we go on vacation, it's typically on a cruise. So for the last 5 years, every Christmas, New Year's, we've celebrated it somewhere on a cruise ship. And we're doing it this coming year on a Princess Panama Canal, mainly because it's one of those bucket list things. And it's one of those things that, it's been 20 years since I did a full transit of the Panama Canal, and I wanted to see the new locks. And so we're really excited to get going. That this particular cruise is on Emerald Princess, and they certainly have a lot of options when it comes to doing Panama Canal. For those of you that are on this and listening to this, of course, every major cruise line transits the Panama Canal, and we have access to all those sailings and can set things up. A little bit about the onboard experience, just because we will have a group on board, is we'll do several pre-cruise get-togethers via Zoom to answer questions and get to know one another. While we're on board the ship, we'll have a welcome aboard gathering so that everybody can get to know one another. One of the perks will be that we'll have a dinner in one of the specialty restaurants for the entire group. And also for Christmas dinner and New Year's Eve dinner, we're going to have a separate place in the dining room that everybody can gather if you'd like, certainly to spend the holiday together. And then for New Year's Eve, we'll have a spot in one of the lounges to go celebrate bringing in the new year after that's all together. And then I'll plan several social gatherings where we can just get together for cocktails and time together. It's not like it's got a ton of things going on, but it's a 15-day cruise. And so it's certainly, I'll be there to help anybody for while you're on the ship, and at the same time, I'll put together some events that we'll have a lot of fun with.
Awesome. That's really great. And I think you made a great point. You're right. There's lots of different ways to see the Panama Canal, lots of different ships to go on. I thought maybe I would share a little bit about who might enjoy a hosted cruise like the one that you're hosting, Brian. I think of families. I know that for myself, multi-generational families, we went and have enjoyed transiting the canal during the holidays. It was such a great way to get together. Sometimes we're so apart. And of course, solo passengers, for many of our guests who may not have someone to celebrate the holidays with, or choose not to celebrate the holidays with, there's such great camaraderie. It's so much fun to get together on a ship and know some of your fellow travelers. And then of course, the answer ultimately to who would enjoy a hosted holiday cruise is everyone. I don't know of anyone like Brian. I've had the great fortune to sail through the canal several times, including on the holidays. And really, we've had such a great time all together and getting to know one another and having a lot of fun. When I think of which ship to choose when going through the Panama Canal, one of the things I think about is the fact that there are multiple days at sea. And Brian, to your point, I think when there are multiple days at sea, sometimes you want to make sure that you're on a ship that really suits you for those sea days. And I love, of course, Santa laying there saying you can do it all or nothing at all. It's all up to you. If you have families along with you, some of the activities that will go on might include, for example, the gingerbread decorating. I will say that my structure was not worthy of photos, so I had to take this one from Princess, but it's a lot of fun. Again, something that you can do all together. There's lots of holiday events. You can join in on the fun. There's carolers, there's both the professional ones, and then of course they always even have the cruise sing-along, which I find is so much fun. There's such an excitement because you become part of their family during the holiday, and you get to hear about where they're from and all the wonderful stories of the families that they've left behind some other place in the world. And then, of course, because we are on a larger ship, we have that wonderful outdoor movie theater. And what they do is during the day and even in the evenings, they play these great holiday classics and some of the newer ones as well, but all family friendly. And it's kind of fun both while you're in the pool or in the evening under the stars to be able to watch that. We had a great time under the stars watching it, eating popcorn. It was so much fun. And of course, Santa does come along and brings gifts to all the children under 18, because some of us, of course, feel like kids, even though we're not. And so it's a lot of fun in the big atrium. Everyone's watching and the kids get all these gifts. And then, of course, we get to New Year's. And I love how when you come into the dining room, they pass out the tiaras and the top hats. And then everyone gets together around the atrium and they have the big balloon drop at midnight. And of course, there's fireworks on the big screen outside. And as Brian said, it's so much fun when you have a group of people to celebrate together with. It really, really adds to the enjoyment. This particular itinerary is December 23rd through January 7th of 23. Starting, of course, in Los Angeles, ending in Fort Lauderdale. You're going to get a chance to visit some of the destinations that we talked about earlier, whether being down the coast of Mexico, Nicaragua, one of my favorite ports to see, the volcanoes there. Costa Rica, we talked about the coffee plantations and the ox carts, the things you can see. And then, of course, this cruise goes through the new locks. And going through the new locks, and of course, I started from the wrong direction, and I do apologize. So I'm going backwards in direction, but you're going to go through the new locks. And yet, this tour offers, or I should say, this sailing offers a stop in Fuerte Amador. And in Fuerte Amador, it's really the port to visit Panama, but you can also see both the old and the new locks from Fuerte Amador. They have a great shore excursion that I love. It takes you from the new locks over to the old locks, and you're right there by the Miraflores locks, which is the really big one, and they have bleachers, and you get to sit right up close and actually watch the ships as they're going through. And it feels so different, of course, because now you're getting the perspective of transiting as well as watching some of the other ships go through. And we talked about visiting Colombia. So overall, just lots of things to do and see along this way. Of course, one of my favorites is the sloth sanctuary in Costa Rica. One more thing that you can do. When you're on a larger ship, you're also going to have lots of options. So, if smaller ships are more your style, you're going to find that you'll have maybe a little bit less options, but maybe more personal space. But on this Princess Cruise, you're going to find that there's everything, literally endless dining options, buffets, international cafe, the traditional and open dining in the dining room. There's outdoor grills and pizza. They were recognized as the best pizza at sea. They offer the pub lunch, which has my favorite bangers and mash and fish and chips. But they also have the room service. So all of these things are included in your room fare, and lots of choices abound. The other thing that really is exciting is that there's lots of choices when it comes to entertainment. So whether it be the big screen entertainment outside, or the live shows that they're literally multi-million-dollar productions that are created exclusively for Princess. It's really a lot of fun, and they have some of the new game shows that they do. The singing show that's very similar to what we see on television, The Voice, but it's actually Voice on the Ocean. So it's kind of fun watching people compete, and especially live. I enjoy watching someone compete, and then ended up having dinner with them one night unexpectedly, and what a great conversation that was. So again, lots of choices for you. So when we think of options, as I mentioned before, there are really two main ways of seeing the Panama Canal. There's the short version, which is round trip from Florida, and it's usually about 10 days, and it goes through the Gatun locks into Gatun Lake, and you see the lake, and you have a shore excursion there, and then it exits again, going out back through the same lock and back through the Caribbean. So that's a 10-day cruise experiencing one lock and the Gatun Lake. So if you don't have time for a full transit, that certainly is an option. I think for most of us who do have the time, the full transit is, of course, the most exciting. And even that, you're going to find that depending on which ship, we've chosen a post-Panamax ship. So that's one of the larger ships. She has all the bells and whistles, beautiful staterooms, a little bit larger staterooms. And so you're going to be able to go all the way through all three sets of locks. And of course, each lock system has locks within that major lock section. So there's lots of choices, lots of times of the year to go. I would say this, that one of the reasons we have chosen the holiday sailing is really because you have to think of the season to go through the Panama Canal. So the Panama Canal season is roughly October. It could start as early as September, all the way through March and maybe into April. And a lot of that has to do with the repositioning of ships. We know that the ships, of course, follow the sun. So in the summer months, they tend to be in Alaska. And then at the end of the Alaska season, they transition down the coast and go through the canal over to the Caribbean side, where they spend the time over there. There's some of the ships will do a couple of transits back and forth during that time frame. And then of course, in the spring, we have all the ships transitioning from the Caribbean side through the canal, and then they do some of the West Coast and then back up to Alaska again. So when it comes to the full transits, especially the ones that might extend up further along the coasts, those are going to be the spring and the fall. But the best season is going to be right there in the sweet spot of December, January. When you think of the Central American schools, they have holidays. They have their summer holiday during that time frame, December and January, because that's the best weather. When we think about summer, we think about June, July. That's the rainy season for them. So that's not necessarily the best time to go. So this is kind of right there in that sweet spot. And again, lots of choices, lots of things that we could discuss. I wanted to share with you a quick picture of our team. These are from one of our recent trainings. Some of the team was here and we took a quick picture just so that you can remember that we are live humans here locally that are ready to answer any of your questions. And speaking of which, we want to invite you to ask some questions.
Hey, KK, maybe you could comment on the pricing for the cruise that I'm going on?
Absolutely. So for this particular cruise, at the moment, there is a no perks rate, meaning just the basic cruise fare, all the way as low as $13.67 per person. Which, when you think about the length of the cruise, that's just insane. That's for an interior room. But there are great prices, and that's the no perks rate. And we have rates that include, right now, we have the choice of what they call the Princess Plus, which has the beverage package and the gratuities and the Wi-Fi, and it has some dinners, and it has so several perks involved. And then we even have the premium package, which includes up to 4 Wi-Fi connections. And so if you're traveling with a family, it's going to include some things like some of the health class options that they have, the exercise options, the yoga, some of the specialized classes that they do. So there's lots of different options for us, different price points along the way. So when you talk to any of our team here, it's really about us talking to you about what works for you. We want to make sure that if you'd like to experience it's all included, don't want to think about it afterwards, I want to know what the price is going in and be done. That's certainly the easy option. If you like the one where you start with a base price and then you add things as you go, and then you find out how much the total is at the other end, you could go that way too. But yes, that's a great question. Thank you for asking that question, Brian. I see here there's a question in the chat box about formal optional nights. There will be a couple of options if you choose to dress up. There will be a couple of options. It's not required any longer. So it used to be, if you didn't have your tuxedo on, you couldn't get into the dining room. It's not like that anymore. And so there's lots of options. But there will be a couple of formal optional nights. I know, for example, they do that for New Year's. And a lot of people like to dress up a little bit for Christmas. But again, no tuxedos are required for this. Let's see, someone's asking about the shorter and longer versions of the canal cruises. Yes. So as I mentioned earlier, there's everything from as short as 10 days when you do the round trip Florida. And then there's 14, 16. There's even some 20, 21 day sailings that go up the coast for other options when the ships are transiting from one end to the other. And I'm going to exit here so that we can see you, so that if you'd like, if you have any questions, there we go. And that way, if you have any questions, please, by all means, feel free to either wave at me and we'll try to answer them, or you can type them in the chat box. Let me see here. There it is. Okay. Do any of you have any questions? What are the different options between the old and the new locks? Thanks for asking, Mr. Wren. You're going to find that, again, ship size is really what determines a lot of which locks you go through. So if you're someone who prefers the smaller ship size, your chances of going through the older locks are much, much higher. If you're looking to go through the new locks, they're almost exclusively, well, I could pretty much say they are exclusively for the larger ship sizes. So you have to have a post-Panamax ship. And of course, one of the things I didn't describe so well is that when you use the older locks, that's where the mules that go up and down the sides, they're the ones who actually pull you through in and out of the locks, whereas the new ones, those are actually tugs that tuck you into the new locks, and then actually move through the locks with you. But yes, there are lots of different options for both, again, depending on your ship size. So if you tell me what ship size you particularly like, or if there's a particular cruise line that you're thinking of, then we can help you narrow down which locks that you might want to go through. Have you been through the locks before? No. It's one of those bucket lists. I will tell you, I was describing to Brian when we were chatting, because we've both been through the canal, and for me, one of the fascinating parts was when, actually before we do the transit. So if you can imagine, all the ships line up. So they all have appointments to go through the canal, right? So there's a per head charge for each ship that goes through the canal. So if they're a cargo ship, they get charged one way, and it's about the tonnage and everything. If it's a passenger ship, in addition to the tonnage, they're actually charged a per head tax. And so if you can imagine, all of these ships at dawn, they sit out there waiting. And I love getting up at crack of dawn while it's just literally twilight, and you go up to the top all the way to the front. I grab my cup of coffee from the bistro, go up there and see all the lights of all the ships that are waiting. And then you see that they kind of start moving around and positioning themselves as they're getting ready to go through the canal. And you see some of the cargo ships, depending on their priority, depending on when their time is, as they start to enter and go through. It's absolutely fascinating. And of course, once you've been through one set of locks and you take a break, and if you have a balcony room, sometimes I always make sure that depending on which way I go, I want to have the Miraflores locks on my left. And the reason I like to have them there is so that I can actually see those mules and the people that are there and the big tower. It's quite fascinating. So kind of fun. Other questions anyone has?
Okay.
Did we cover everything? That's amazing.
All right. Well, we want to thank you very much for attending today. And of course, like any of your travel needs, we're here to help you, Panama Canal or whatever you'd like to do. We are here to assist you with any of your travel needs. So we appreciate your time. This was a quick overview, but I'm actually looking forward to sailing with some of you. So don't hesitate to reach out if I can answer any questions for you too.